So how does this work? There's a deep state, there's not a deep state. Why the doublethink? Well, what I'm going to suggest here is that reality has been structured for a very long time so that we can see something and not see it. Perhaps the meme of our day is this idea of whether or not a person's awake and are seeing things. So when we talk about a visible government and an invisible government, we know that somehow some people simply don't want to see it. But it seems that what is old is new again. I'm talking here about Plato's idea, his allegory, of the cave from the 4th century BC that's getting a lot of play these days. And I'm going to suggest to you that what we usually hear about Plato these days is an exoteric version of his cave that we hear at the university system especially. And that version goes something like this. There are these prisoners trapped in a cage or in a cave, and they're looking at images on the wall. And these images that they're seeing is their reality. Suddenly one day a prisoner sees that he's chained and he breaks the chains and he's walking toward the back of the cave. And he starts to realize that there are theater props there and a theater fire there that seems to be casting an image. And he's about to exit the cage or the cave. But before he gets outside, he's struck by a beam of light, which of course is the sun, and it hurts him very much. And it's painful. But he proceeds outside of the cave, realizing especially then that those were simply theater props below, that outside there's a real sky and a real sun and a real sea. And he has sort of a sense of victory. And this is what we're taught at the university, that this is enlightenment, that this is reason triumphing over superstition, and that the professor is sort of the hero that brought us out into the world of book learning. And we run back and tell everybody our $2 words that we learned at the university, and they're sort of impressed, but maybe they're not quite that impressed, and that's the end of the story. But in the darker, deeper meaning of what Plato is getting to, I believe he's talking about the very connection between oligarchs, oligarchy, and the deep state. And what he's suggesting here is that the fundamental structure of our reality has actually been created so that our perception of the world makes us not want to find out the truth. We hug on to our artificial reality that's given to us by the oligarchy. We enjoy our amusements. We love our servitude. So that somebody that begins to look at the very fundamental nature of how this system has been in order to alter our reality threatens those people who love their servitude, so that they look at that person with contempt. The person is viewed as somebody that needs to be eliminated in a hard or soft way. And of course, many of us therefore don't want to look into the invisible aspects or the invisible powers that structure our reality the way it is structured. Because the more we dig into this system, this complex of power, this matrix, we begin to find that there's some other powers at play here, because the system is so complete, it's so universal, that we begin to think that it must involve something more than complete power and control. There must be a moral element to this esoteric play of altering perceptions. And we began to see that the system itself and those who constructed it fancy themselves beyond good and evil. For these people, that their right to rule comes from transcending these artificial constructs. They feel that that's what gives them the right and the power to rule. But for those that dig in even a little bit deeper, they begin to see that good and evil are in fact objective phenomenon. They are the real truth. Once we invert the artificial truth, we begin to discover our reflection of a larger compost, of a battle between good and evil. And when we can see that we are upon a playing field, and good and evil are the overarching structure, we begin to acknowledge our own free will, separate and independent from the structure of reality given to us by the oligarchs. And we begin to own truth for ourselves as being the guiding light. And there's been many great poets and thinkers over the age that have made this discovery. One of the truths comes, I believe, from the Bible. They call the matrix, or the system, or the complex, the world. And true reality is our ability to invert this artificial reality, to enter through the dark point of seeing the constructions of good and evil, and enter into the responsibility of accepting the objective reality of good and evil and owning that decision as being the ultimate decision. So when we begin to look at the deep state, we're digging into something more than forces behind the executive office in the United States. We're looking at the ultimate battle of good and evil and our ability to choose between good and evil.